Welcome back to the next ICG webinar. And the question I need to ask today of these fine people on this webinar is the old job roles of neg, valuer and branch manager so 20th century, with some estate agents actually creating new style types of roles? Interestingly, Peter Knight from the Property Academy is suggesting that we should be having concierges, asset managers, and the old jobs of neg and valuer and listers and branch managers are out the door. So I'd like to start off with Charlotte Campbell. Charlotte, is the old neg, valuer, branch manager roles last century, or do you think they still have a place in today's society?
I think at the moment they still have a place, and I would say that, again, I cover people from the north and the south all over the country, and I think there's variables anyway within that. I think the traditional London role of neg, listing, doing all one job is not the same in the north, and there are definitely different environments where people work in different pockets of skill set. Having said that, I think when regulation comes in and people's job titles change, I think there might be an evolution of how those jobs work. But I think predominantly, we've all got to do a mixture of tasks within our day, haven't we? And I think that relationship with our client is always going to have to be key. What the job title is, does it really matter?
True. I'd like to go to Iain White. Iain, you have a lot of input with Australian estate agents, and they always find it quite strange that the negotiator, the person who actually negotiates the offer, is different to the person who puts the house on the market. What have you got to add to this?
Yeah, look, I think there are two. I mean, there are lots of flavors of different models that are wrapped up in this question of job, not so much job titles, but job descriptions, what people actually do when they're an estate agent. And I see lots of models that are very good where the agent does everything end to end, cradle to grave. They look after the client from inception right the way through to move date. And that's fine. There is nothing wrong with that. It will attract a certain type of person that wants to have a relationship from A to B. And that's fine. There are others that I would call more compartmentalized, where the initial lead comes in, it's processed very well, either through a combination of tech and individuals, and ultimately gets passed up line to somebody that will facilitate the viewing or the offer or whatever else. And I don't really see that either of those models is a winner or a loser. It's just how you operate those models. If you are exceptional in the way you deliver the model, you should, in theory, through your marketing, attract the right client that's akin to that model, and therefore you'll have a happy business and a happy workforce. Personally, I believe that the roles that Peter was getting at, and I thought his article was very interesting and very thought-provoking and very spot on as normal, is that some of the roles within a estate agency are very, they're very much there just because they've always been there. But when you actually stop and analyze it and say, well, hang on a second, what are they adding to the customer journey? What are they adding to the relationship between the business and the client? And the answer is often you have to come back and say nothing. Now, if you do that assessment and you come back with the answer nothing, well, you've got to reimagine your business to have different types of people. And the beauty of right now is there are people from other industries that fulfill some of these new criteria brilliantly well. The one thing I would say that remains consistent is the guy at the top that lists, negotiates, and is the man that, or the lady that's really doing the business. That role hasn't changed. They still need to be the same person they were 20 years ago, but those people have largely, the caliber of those has come down, the volume of them has come down. So but I if you haven't read the article from Peter, then I suggest you do, and then ask yourself, the job roles that my current people fulfill, are they really adding value to the customer experience, or are they just there because tradition says they have to be there? And I think you'll find there'll be a lot of reimagining that should be taking place if you go through that self-assessment scenario.
Okay, let's go to Gary now. What have you got to add to this? And after that, we'll go to Ben.
Yeah, just really to back up what Iain's saying, having been on the front line as an agent for a long time, I think the important thing is being able to take ownership. Is for the client to know that you have ownership of what you've agreed to do, and that you will see that through with the assistance of other people. I think the position of you within that organisation is not key to them as such. It's taking genuine responsibility. Having said that, within the office or within the organisation, it is still important to have leadership. So whether that be a manager, it needs to be somebody who will lead the ship.
So really what you're saying is, and I think Iain, you echoed this, it doesn't really matter what the model is. Do we have someone at the top who's leading it, driving it, making sure that it's working, and taking from there? Ben, what have you got to add to the party?
Well, I think it's the same with some of the other webinars we've been covering, which is what does your customer actually want, and ultimately they probably do want some, a single point of contact. They just need to know who they're speaking to. So that's what they might see on the front end. And behind the scenes, there might be a team made up of, the lister, someone writing the property particular or whatever. One of the ones we found that started coming out quite a lot recently is this concept of a sort of property marketing director. And I think at the end of the day, estate agents are marketing machines for property. So having a sort of title like that sounds like you're actively going to be doing something, rather than just sort of maybe a neg or a lister, which is a bit passive and a bit sort of inside the business rather than customer centric.
Well, as you know, I bang on constantly about video, and in fact, I'm aware that some estate agents are actually taking on people whose sole job it is to do homes under the hammer walk rounds of properties. There you go. Good stuff. Kristjan, have you got anything to add to the party on this one?
So I don't think it'll surprise people. I've never been a particular fan of traditional job titles. I think, as Ben touched on, I think they largely mean nothing to your client base. I'm yet to have someone ring up and saying, "Oh, could I speak to a lettings negotiator, please?" They will usually call up and say, "Can I speak to someone in lettings?" or "Can I speak to someone in property management?" So I think job titles, as Gary touched on, is actually more about your internal structure. Staff quite often get caught up about what their title is because they assume that there is some correlation between what they're labelled as and how important they are in the company and how much money they make. So I think that's up to you as a leader to determine whether that is true, whether that has real value in it. For us at base, it was always more about creating a team thing. So we very much do want a consumer to call up and be able to talk to anyone in the business. Anyone realistically should be able to help someone unless it's a very specific request. Flip side for us in the Depositary, we just had a bit of fun with it really, because I've seen a lot of companies that are similar sizes to us with big executive boards, CEOs and CFOs and CTOs and all these executive suite labels, which I think are maybe perhaps a little bit misleading on the overall structure of the business. We took more of a fun approach, and we've taken labels from the space scheme. So in the Depositary, I'm mission commander. That's what you would call someone who leads a space mission. Carla, who's sort of our first point of contact for our clients, is a mission specialist. Our lead dev is chief flight technician. It's just a bit of fun. People still get fundamentally what the roles are. It doesn't become too hoity-toity. It doesn't become too elitist about what a label means and what that means to your role in the business. So I think you can actually use your job titles actually as a bit of fun. And I can't think of any names off the top, but I've seen some agents who've done some fun stuff with that, where they've given people a bit labels which still correlate what their day-to-day duty is, but there's a bit of humor, there's a bit of buy-in, and actually from a client base, they read it and they still get what that person does. So yeah, I'm not a fan of traditional labels. So yeah, I don't think they're needed, but I think the two key things are your clients need to understand who does what, and your staff need to feel empowered in whatever it is they're fulfilling for you.
Okay, let's go final 30 seconds from Iain White.
I just think I wanted to reiterate the bit about the culture of people wanting a certain title. I think that in itself is the bit that needs to be fixed, because that culture is just outdated. It's just gone. It's no longer relevant. Why would you make your best lister your worst manager? Why would you do that?
Thank you for your time today, everyone, and I will leave you in peace. And my name's Chris Watkin, head of toilets and catering. We'll see you on the next ICG webinar, where we'll be talking about ROPA and whether you need a high street agency.